Welcome back to another edition of Mailbag Monday, where Chris and I are answering all of your marketing, data, AI, and legal questions about generative AI. That's a big theme for this month. And so, Chris, Jocelyn asked, from a copyright perspective, if you use AI generated HTML on your website, how will that impact the overall copyright on a company's website? Will the copy remain copyrighted?
Okay, so first,
We're not lawyers.
Not lawyers. We cannot give legal advice. If you need legal advice, hire an actual lawyer. This is very interesting because it's differentiating code from presentation, right? So I'm going to assume in Jocelyn's case, she's saying the human generated copy on the website is there. That remains copyrighted because it is generated by a human. The US, the UK, and the EU have all ruled essentially that copyright can only be given to humans or representatives of humans. Machines, chimpanzees, whatever, they cannot claim copyright. But this is interesting because Jocelyn is asking if the underlying display code, the actual HTML, like this is a table, this is a heading, and stuff like that, if that is machine generated, does that impact the copyright of the copy? And the answer is no. In the same way that if you had a bucket of toys, right, and the toys inside were yours, but the bucket was not, just because the toys from the bucket does not change the ownership of the toys, right? The bucket is somebody else's or it doesn't belong to anyone, right? And that's what the HTML, the code that runs your website, is. That can't be copyrighted, right? So someone else could take the structure, the underlying code of your website, if it was purely machine generated, and copy that and use that themselves, right? So they could use that HTML. But if the writing, the content, the images and stuff, if that is all human generated, that is still yours. So in some ways, it's kind of like how people think about like Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics. Google Tag Manager is a container in which Google Analytics and other stuff sit inside of it. In this case, your HTML that is machine generated still has human content inside of it. So the container can't be copyrighted, but the contents can.
I like how your example included finding a random bucket and putting your stuff inside of it.
You know, when you have kids, you're constantly cleaning up after them.
It reminds me, and this is a little bit of a digression, but I'll bring it back to the point. It reminds me when I worked a few jobs ago as a product manager, the stakeholders felt very strongly about copywriting the underlying code that went into the product that we were writing. But the challenge was that the code was literally changing minute by minute every day. So like we couldn't ever get a clean copy of the code to protect the IP of it to go through the copyright process. The reason I bring this up is because it strikes me that copywriting a website overall isn't really what you're doing. You're copywriting the content, you're copywriting the brand, but unless you have stood up your own website on your own servers, you're likely using a hosted service like a WordPress or something else. And they still, in some ways, you are building on rented land, and you can't copyright something that somebody else already owns. And so you have to think about the pieces that you want to protect. And in this case, again, very simple example. We don't know the full context of what Jocelyn is asking, but if it's the content that you're trying to copyright, then the code underlying on the website is kind of irrelevant.
Exactly. That's a really good example, Katie, because if you think about it, Squarespace or Wix or WordPress, they don't own your site, but they absolutely own the framework, maybe the template that you're using. If a machine has generated the template, then the template is ineligible for copyright. Right. But the content you put in that template is eligible. So think about if your website was all just lorem ipsum and then placeholder images, right? That had no copyright attached to it. Then yes, your HTML could not be copyrighted because it's machine generated. The moment you switch out, from a picture of a monkey to like your CEO, and you put in the actual copy of that person instead of a lorem ipsum paragraph, now your content is copyrightable.
I think of it in terms of, so I used to own a condo, and I owned from the studs in. And the condo association owned from the studs out, which was constantly a battle because I would find them outside my windows, and I would say, get off my property, and they would say, it's not yours, it's ours. But it's very much the same idea. If you have a website, you own from the studs in, and the hosting service owns from the studs out.
Yep. And the exact same thing here. The machine is made of the studs. I mean, that makes no sense. Okay.
I think the point being is that, in terms of copyright, as we've stated in other episodes, you can't copyright an idea, but you can copyright the content. If you're trying to copyright the HTML, if it's machine generated, that's ineligible. But also look at why you're copywriting the HTML. What is it that the HTML does that it needs to be copyrighted? So those are bigger questions to ask.
Exactly. So really good question. And hopefully this was helpful. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching today's show. If you liked it, please hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when we publish new shows. If you want to catch all our content, including back episodes, subscribe to our free Inbox Insights newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Want to talk about what you've enjoyed? Join our free Slack community, Analytics for Marketers, at trustinsights.ai/analyticsformarketers. Need help with your marketing, data, analytics, or AI? Drop us a line at trustinsights.ai/contact. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.